And a few days ago was the day that marked the day when the books were offloaded onto the Jaladuta by Cochin. They didn't leave, the books weren't on the ship when they left Calcutta, but a little bit down South India. They were put on the boat. So he was leaving the future of the Hare Krishna movement in the hands of children who could barely understand what was happening then, let alone what was to happen in the future. And he was protecting us and ISKCON from outside influences. He inspired faith. He taught us by his own example of faithfulness and purity. And he built his faith through strong lectures, his honesty, his transparency, his loving care and guidance. There were no scandals surrounding his character. He embodied faith in a world of cheating and disappointment. So faith inspires gratitude and an obligation that is experienced through service. So when we accept something from our Guru, a debt is formed, and we're obliged to reciprocate. And that reciprocation is the real meaning of Guru Dakshin. Not, you get initiated, you go around, like, you ask for some money. That's one type of Dakshin, but the real Dakshin is to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. So what did Prabhupada want from us? He wanted that we would become lovers of Krishna. It's really interesting how that was something even people outside of our own little realm could pick up on. And there was this one kind of crazy hippie personality who eventually met Prabhupada, and he wrote a song. No, I don't want that. He wrote a song, Crazy Lovers of Krishna. So people could understand, even people that weren't, card carrying, sign on the line Hare Krishnas, they could understand. He wanted us to become lovers of Krishna. And to attain that love, we must follow his instructions and not someone else's. Because Srila Prabhupada is our Acharya. We follow his instructions to progress spiritually. And following his instructions as they were given is not sentimental, it's essential. We heard today, Guru Nisha, that satisfaction of Guru is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Prabhupada said, I'm not a great devotee. My only qualification is my 100% faith in my spiritual master. And this loyalty was Srila Prabhupada's source of power to pioneer and spread the Sankirtan movement. And to be effective, his followers, all of us, must develop our own faith to teach and bolster faith in Srila Prabhupada by representing him effectively. His humility was ever apparent. He told on one occasion, 1967, still early on, although officially I am your spiritual master, by the way, December 67, so quite early on. Although officially I am your spiritual master, I consider all of you as my spiritual masters, because your love for Krishna and service for Krishna teach me how to become a sincere Krishna-conscious person. So this is Srila Prabhupada. There's a suitable prayer for all devotees that was uttered by Sri Prahlad. O my Lord, best of the givers of benediction, if you at all want to bestow a desirable benediction upon me, then I pray from your Lordship that within the core of my heart there be no material desires. It's a beautiful prayer, 7-10-7, you know. So it's our good fortune to be counted as his disciples, his grand disciples, and followers into the future. And it is our duty to remain loyal to his teachings and legacy, so that we may proudly cherish the future of ISKCON. Well, some of you in this room will be present for the 100th year ISKCON Jubilee. Like in 2016, we had the 50th. And all over the planet, we were having all these wonderful celebrations. I don't know what happened here at some, but it was just fantastic. From the biggest temple to the smallest temple, people just came up with really creative and imaginative ways to express their joy and introduce people to the ISKCON Hare Krishna movement, 50 years. So the 100th year Golden Jubilee, some of you here, I'm looking to see if anybody, how young you are. Anyway, there's some younger ones, and you know, these beautiful little children that are scooting around. You know, you'll be present. So mark these instructive words and remain loyal followers of Srila Prabhupada and his ISKCON mission, and take the credit for doing so. One time Srila Prabhupada was asked about, the Lord Chaitanya was God. He could have done this, he could have spread it himself. So why didn't he do that? And Prabhupada said, well, he left something for me to do. So now I'm leaving something for you to do and take the credit for doing it, you know. So this is, Prabhupada said, this is wanted. And Srila Prabhupada will empower anyone who takes to Krishna consciousness with sincere faith and determination, with the ability to further the mission, simply by carrying out this order, push on the movement. I want you boys and girls to say it. Push on the movement. Okay, push on the movement. You know, we push on so many things. Push on this movement, you know. Anyway, so just something I wanted to mention. And there's, oh yeah, there was one more thing about Radharani. So, Prabhupada, this is in a letter to somebody. Kirtika is the name of the third daughter of Prajapati Daksha. And it's a custom in Braj to name girls after Daksha's daughters. So the name of Radharani's mother was Kirtika, or Kirtita, depending on your pronunciation. And Radharani became known as Kartiki. Kartiki, another name, which means born of Kirtika. So Srila Sanatana Goswami gave us the key to understanding the significance of the holy month of Kartik. Krishna says, Masanam Mardasir Shoham. Of months I am Mardashira. This is November, December. So Kartika precedes Mardashirasa. And therefore Kartika represents, Kartik represents Srimati Radharani. And the Gaudiya Vaishnavas follow Kartik Vrat especially to satisfy Srimati Radharani by worshipping her during this month. Srimati Radhika is most famous for her compassion, and therefore we follow the rules and regulations of Kartika Vrat, which are called Niyama Seva, so that Srimati Radharani will pour upon us her divine compassion. Let Sri Radhika and her Sakis bestow upon us the eternal loving devotional service to the divine couple in Vrindavan groves. For Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Kartika Vrat is more important than any other vows during the year. Most other vows for the pleasure of Shamsundara and his expansions last only half a day or 1 day. The names Janmastami, Ramnavami, Nrsimha Chaturdasi, Vamana, Dwadasi. But for the pleasure of Sri Radha Kartika, Kartik vows last 1 month. So, I'll share a few. I think the RT's in 30 minutes, right?
Yes.
6:30. Okay. So I'll share just a few personal. The letters are to me, but there were a reason they were written. So in one letter in November of '68. I wrote, and he says, "Your questions are very nice." And my question was about super soul, Paramama. I said, yes, the super soul and the soul are both unchanged. The difference is that in material contact, the soul appears to be changed. But the super soul is not affected by material contamination. Therefore, there is no sign of change. And then he gives an example. The change of the soul is like water comes into contact. Water becomes ice when it comes into contact with the refrigerator. And as soon as there is a temperature, the ice again becomes water. So similarly, the changing nature of the soul is just like the change of water to ice. So the changing nature of the soul is like the change of water to ice, and the tendency of ice is to melt and again become water. So due to the contamination of matter, the soul by illusion identifies with material existency, but the tendency is to melt again to Krishna consciousness. So when there's sufficient temperature, in contact with the bona fide spiritual master and devotees, the soul again becomes Krishna conscious. And if someone is fortunate enough to find a bona fide spiritual master, his life is successful. And to be fortunate, there must be sincerity, and Krishna will lead you to a bona fide spiritual master. Yeah. So this particular letter that I'm coming to was written after leaving for England from America. And my daughter was not even walking then. She was 5 weeks old when we departed. And we didn't have a fixed address, so we kept bouncing around from one place to the other. And without any, means of connecting, having a phone of any kind, anything like that. And for my part, I was finding it a little difficult to manage things. I had this little baby that was not yet even walking, and then there was, a husband, and then, there was the mission, and we had to find a place. It was just a really fever pitch. We have to find a place. And that was also curious because we had no money to find a place, but that didn't deter us from finding a place. And my role at that point would be that I would do the shopping and the cooking and the laundry for the other devotees so that they could go out and find a place. And it wasn't like there was any, conveyance. I had the baby, I got one of those things you push the baby in, so her little push thing became, if I do the shopping, I do laundry and everything was piled on top of the baby. And we didn't even have our own showers. We had to go out to a public shower. But that was something Srila Prabhupada himself had to do when he was first in New York City. He was living in an not in an apartment building, but a office building. And he only had a small room without an exterior window. There was one toilet in the hallway. And at one point, so that he had to go out in the street, walk to some public showers, which I don't even think they have anymore. And at one point, there was this big nightmare of all the electricity went out. Big, huge thing. It affected all of New York City, all of the eastern seaboard, and even parts of Canada, because we were all working on the same electricity grid. So the person who was, if you want to call it, hosting Prabhupada in that building, he sent one of his people over with a candle and a torchlight and some fruits to bring up to Srila Prabhupada. And he was just sitting there. He comes in and Prabhupada's just sitting in pitch dark. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Everywhere else, people were frantic, freaking out to the max. And Prabhupada was sitting in the dark, pitch dark, chanting Hare Krishna. Sometimes, he wrote this to another friend, sometimes I cannot sleep at night due to hunger. This is 1965. Many of us, myself included, we're already there on that. I wasn't in New York, but I was there. I was in San Francisco waiting to meet him. I didn't know at that point I was waiting to meet him, but that's what was happening. You know, it's not like he came to America and a red carpet was rolled out. You know the poem he wrote, "Why have you brought me here?" He's asking Krishna, "Why have you brought me here?" You know, if you like, you can make me dance. You know. So he definitely struggled. So, you know, for me to say we also struggled, it was a different dimension, but still a struggle was there, you know. And we were constantly thinking, how can we get a building? How can we, you know, that was like another mantra for us. So in the meantime, I'm somehow found it even more difficult, just, you know, going through the different situations. And I wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada, which, you know, in retrospect was impudent. Impudent meant not really appropriate. But Srila Prabhupada, with his infinite mercy, answered the letter. And you can tell by the answer what I have. He says, "I have noted the contents with great satisfaction. I think that your humble sentiments are very nicely exposed here, and your sincere desire to serve the Lord is the real perfection of life." But then came the question, because you have asked if I found it difficult to carry on devotional service when in my Grihastha life. You know, so listen up, Grihastha says this is very valuable advice. So you have asked if I found it difficult to carry out devotional service when in my Grihastha life. And yes, I did. But then he explains what the difficulty for him was, which was nowhere akin to my situation. In my household life, I was strictly following regulative principles, but my wife was reluctant to assist me properly. Therefore, I was obliged to give up their company. Actually, you know, what Prabhupada did by accepting the sannyasa ashram, he broadened his field of activities. He said, frankly, if his family had been willing to help him, he would have stayed. But they weren't, and actually it's Krishna's mercy, because here we are. Yeah. He broadened his field of activities. My wife was reluctant to assist me properly, therefore I was obliged to give up their company. So then he said, I had the original small Jagannath deities that I had originally found in San Francisco. So I had these little deities with me. And you can see, I asked him about that. And you try to take care of Lord Jagannath as far as possible after doing your household duties. But, and here comes the zinger, you should be strict only in completing 16 rounds of chanting. That will save you from all discrepancies. As a householder, even there is some flaws in following the rules and regulations, it doesn't matter. You should try your best, and with Krishna's help, Krishna will help you. If you keep your heart in that attitude that you want to become a pure and sincere devotee, you must be a sincere devotee, and Krishna will help you. You have to keep your heart in that way. That is your business. I hope you are well with your child. But, you know, very, very clear instruction. And it's not like all of a sudden everything got easier, but it was clear, this is your duty, and you have to figure out how to do it sometimes. A lot of times people, there's another mantra I find creeping into our lives nowadays. It's hard. Anybody ever said that? It's hard. Well, that's not our mantra. Our mantra is the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Prabhupada said it is our main mantra. So, anyway, I wanted to share that letter because I think it's important. And it's actually, it gives some hope. Hey, I can probably do this. You know, keep your heart in that attitude. You want to be a pure devotee and a sincere devotee, you must be a sincere devotee, and Krishna will help you. You know, you have to keep your heart in that way. That's your business. And we were in 74. I was to come back to England. It was this great crisis, so I wrote to Prabhupada about that. And he responded, you write that things are in a crisis in England. The crisis was induced by the government, with oil shortage and IRA bombings. Therefore, we have to take shelter of Krishna. If Krishna wants to kill us, that is not wrong. It is his desire. Our business should just be to follow the regulative schedule, deity worship, distributing prasadam, distributing books, and never mind the material danger. Krishna consciousness is meant to be on the platform of deathlessness. Every shloka in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam is informing us of this. If you read these books very carefully, you will understand this platform of deathlessness, as opposed to the material condition in which no one wants to die. No one wants to die, but no one can check death. Srila Prabhupada was he wasn't a love and light guru. You know, he didn't send us love and light. He sent us the absolute truth. This was January of '69, and by the letter you'll understand what I had written to him. My dear Malati, please accept my blessings. I'm in due receipt of your letter, undated. The Prabhupada was very clear. If you don't, only an unintelligent person doesn't know the dates. So I'm in due receipt of your letter, undated, and very pleased to note the contents. Regarding the Radha Sham chanting, which you have heard, is not very good. In our temple, strictly, Hare Krishna chanting should be given more importance. In our temple, here's our Acharya speaking to us, that Hare Krishna chanting should be given more importance. There's no harm in this mantra you have heard, but it's not very important. There are many such common songs composed by common devotees out of sentiment, but our principle is to stick to the authorities and always remember that Hare Krishna is the prime authorized mantra. And then he goes, I'd had this encounter with a yogi student, and I mentioned it to Prabhupada, because I'm very much encouraged to learn that you're bold enough to challenge any non-devotee, as you did with that impersonalist yoga student. So that should be the temperament of all our preachers. We should not be aggressive, but we should not tolerate any sort of nonsense. You know, one who says that God is not merciful because he's made one person happy and one distressed is most nonsensical. This very statement affirms that person, as a godless rascal. All these so-called yogis are therefore rascals because they have no actual realization of God. Falsely, they think themselves as God, and their association should be avoided as far as possible. It's like Lord Chaitanya, Vishnu, Vishnu, and he would hear some and said, Vishnu, Vishnu. There's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you know, we're so foolish sometimes. Let me hear more. Anyway, then he goes back regarding this Shama Mataji Dasi from Vrindavan. So here was this thing. She was this not such a large lady, and she was wearing white, and everybody was calling her Mataji. So at that point, we hadn't been introduced to the Mataji cult yet, so we thought Mataji was her name. And then, but just to see how things can be influenced, he says, change one word, the whole thing will be lost. So, you know, like, she was wearing white and chanting Hare Krishna. So we were thinking, oh, Prabhupada's coming, let's get white saris. But I was like, I have a kid, I'm not going to wear white, you know, only because it would show the spots and stains like when you have a kid, you know. So at the airport, Janaki and Jumuna, they have nice white saris, and I got a kind of a natural colored one. And he looks at us, he goes, who's told you to do that? White, your husbands are living, white is for widows. You should have a border. You know? I mean, the next day I was to the shop, I got some, even though I didn't have white, I got the part to have a border, so I got some ribbon, they got some ribbon. I can't stand to sew, but I sewed that border on my sari like anything. You know, in those days, Prabhupada gave you instruction. You didn't go, well, I'll put that on my bucket list. You did it. You know, because you did it ASAP, and you wanted to do it. You didn't feel pressured, you wanted to do it. So, you know, just to see how you could a little, you know, influence in the wrong way. So he goes, regarding the Shama Mataji Dasi from Vrindavan, does she sing Hare Krishna mantra or not? If she chants Hare Krishna, it's all right. And if she does not chant Hare Krishna mantra, you should ask her why she does not. I am not familiar with her spiritual master, Gaurangi Das, but if he's taught her to sing this Radhe Sham song, then he's also not authorized. So as it came out, she did chant Hare Krishna, and then there was one of these shots heard around the world, meaning like even without the telex and the internet and all that stuff, news could travel fast in ISKCON, you know. She went to LA, and Prabhupada was there, and there was kirtan, and she was bouncing. She also played Mridanga very nice. So, like, she starts dancing, and Prabhupada was in front of Rukmini Gaurkadish, and he also started dancing, and he was jumping up and down, and he had a phone call from the Swamiji is jumping up and down, he's leaping, you know. And we're telling everybody. So that's what I mean, how, you know, things would travel. And we first heard Hari Bol. What is that Hari Bol? Prabhupada said, shortcut to Hare Krishna. But he said, main mantra is Hare Krishna. He said, there's the Hare Bol sound, they have this like upper sampradaya, the Hare Bol people. They just chant Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol. That's it. They don't chant, Hare Krishna. Same with the Radhi, 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 Radhi. Like when we first went to India, and we didn't even go to Vrindavan right away. We didn't go grab a ticket and get on a train or a plane to go to Vrindavan. We waited to be invited there and to be taken there by this divine grace Srila Prabhupada. So when we finally got there, and that was like, a little while, a couple of years after we first initially came, we got introduced, and people, Radhe, Radhe, Radhe. So Srila Prabhupada, by this time, Srila Prabhupada, they were saying Radhe, Radhe. He goes, yes. He didn't put it down. And we replied, Hare Krishna. So that was our position. Hare Krishna. And then Revati Nandana, at the time he was sannyas, and he asked Prabhupada, one devotee picked up a chant in India. This, Hey Krishna Govinda, Hari Murari, Hey Nata Narayan, Radhe Sudeva. You've probably all heard this, you might have even sung this. So what did Prabhupada say about that? He said, well, he called us into the room, the Revati Nandana is narrating this. He called us into his room and he goes, this is not a Vedic mantra, it's a cinema song. An intelligent devotee just takes whatever his spiritual master provides for him, considering that to be sufficient. Just like Lord Chaitanya, what did he say? My spiritual master considered me a fool. So you take what your spiritual master provides. There are many names of God you can chant, but it is best to take whatever comes into cyclic succession and what the spiritual master introduces. And he ends it with, we cannot follow an upstart manufacturing some song, manufacturing some ideas. We cannot follow that. What is an authorized song? We shall sing. What is an authorized method? We shall follow. And that was Srila Prabhupada's fairly clear instructions to us. And we were happy to follow them, Oh yeah, just some random things. Like Srila Prabhupada was asked about Krishna coming as Ram. And he explained that Krishna does not come as Ram, but that Krishna and Rama and all of Krishna's incarnations are eternal. They always exist. In other words, they don't just come. They're already existing. He said it's like the sun is in one place, it's sunshine, in another place it's 4 o'clock, and another place it's sunset. But the sun itself is always the same. So similarly, Krishna always exists in its original form, Krishna, but also as Rama and his other incarnations. Just remembering too, Prabhupada was also extremely practical. So, we had gotten to the stage we now had nectar of devotion. It says there, Ekadashi comes twice a month on the 11th day of the moon, both waning and waxing. On that day, all the devotees remain fasting throughout the day and night, continuously chanting the glories of the Lord. So Jamuna asked, should we also observe Ekadashi like that? And Prabhupada's answer, no, we have too much service to do for Krishna. He said, Ekadashi is most auspicious and chanting is most effective. And then another devotee goes, well, should we chant 25 rounds in Ekadashi? Why only 25 rounds? You should chant as many as possible. And then, it was another funny one, this devotee, like sometimes devotees could get, I don't know, how do we say that? I don't know the word in French. Anyway, they could get we say a little anal, like, you know. So this devotee goes to Prabhupada, his hand's in the bead bag, and he goes, our hand is in our bead bag, right hand is in the bead bag, so we chant. So is it all right to accept prasad with our left hand and pop it into our mouth? Practical Prabhupada, yes, you can take that shortcut. At one time on the way from Mayapur to Calcutta, there was this kind of stop by a little mango grove. That we'd always stop and there'd be a little picnic or something. And there was like a new person to the entourage. And he was, every time anybody wanted anything or Prabhupada wanted anything, he'd jump up, go wash his hands. And then, you know, and he was like popping up and down. And Prabhupada said, sit down, it's all right. You're among friends. So, you know, it's like Prabhupada, there was times to stand on formality, and then you're among friends, you know, talking, peace, take it easy, you know. Yeah, so Prabhupada was also extremely broad-minded. And how many of you read Giri Swami's Dancing White Elephants? So, I mean, it's just really a fantastic read. And this was one of the experiences that we had there. So, and it was our first experience with a real Kshatriya. And the fellow's name was Singh, and he had this very palatial place. All the Kshatriya trappings of his palatial surroundings, and he was openly enthusiastic about Krishna consciousness. And the walls of the spacious dining room where we were going to be eating, we were all going to be eating. So there was like heads of animals that he had killed, the trophies, the wild wildebeest, the elephants, the lions, the tigers, and the antelopes. And Prabhupada explained to us, because he could realize our little minds were like spinning two different directions. Kshatriyas must hunt animals to practice how to kill people in battle. A Kshatriya's dharma is to fight. So they must practice by hunting. This is described in the Vedas. We are in the house of a real Kshatriya. And then we brought before the prize trophy. It was the enormous head of a man-eating tiger. And Prabhupada looks at it and he goes, you have killed this? He said, yes, this man-eating tiger has killed many people in a nearby village. So I went and shot it. Prabhupada's eyes open, he goes, oh, very nice. So, you know, we have our tendency to understand things in a narrow, but Prabhupada very broad-minded, because there's no limitations on Krishna consciousness, you know. I'm just thinking where to go, because some stories take a little while to talk, to explain. Anyway, Srila Prabhupada was very gallant. Gallant means brave, heroic. Just like you probably are well familiar with the story how he saved Radhalanda and Ashwara from imminent damage when there was the installation and there was this pillar, but it was unsecured. There were two pillars with a platform, and they were over the heads of Radhalanda and Ashwara, and on top of the pillars was Jagannath, Subhadra, and Baladev. And it was collapsing. And the devotees were so busy hurrying bowling, nobody noticed it, except Srila Prabhupada leaped from his Vyasa sign up to the altar, just like, and he was holding the pillar up until help arrived. It took a while for the blissful mental finally realized what was going on. They were very brave, very gallant. And I remember on that same day, so some people got up to leave. It was like some Indian guests came. And Prabhupada said, wait, you must have prasad, wait. And he turns to give them prasad. And like dull-minded devotees that we were, there isn't anything ready yet. Prabhupada, bring something. So somebody scampers downstairs, they cut up some fruit, they bring it up to the altar, they put it on the altar, and they start ringing the bell. Prabhupada said, distribute it. Prabhupada is not offered yet. He's like ringing the bell. Prabhupada looks in this like exquisite look he could give you, which could do two things at one time. Simultaneously, you just burn you to ashes and make you feel blessed. You know? So he goes factually, as soon as it touches the altar, it's offered. Which doesn't mean you can get away. You know, we need to go through those little things. Haribol. But he gave the instruction, nobody should ever leave the temple without prasad. Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai. Radhastami ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki